Welcome into this segment of Behind the Pen presented by MostValuablePodcast.com. If you want to listen to the full podcast, go to blogtalkradio.com/MostValuablePodcast. Also, we're on iTunes, so check us out there as well. Thank you all for listening as always, and enjoy the show.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome in, my friends, to another episode of Behind the Pen. My name is Mike Rankin, and I am your host for today's show, and I am excited to speak to all of you today. It is June 9th, one of my favorite days of the year. Summer is here, baseball is here, and I'm going to talk baseball in this show for sure. Cubs in the news for a lot of the wrong reasons. Not only are they not really playing well, but now they have to deal with this domestic violence accusation surrounding Addison Russell and his family. Major League Baseball is investigating it. The Cubs are doing their due diligence, so gotta dive into that topic. It's unfortunate, but I'm going to talk about it. Also, in lighter news, we're going to talk about a really good team in Major League Baseball, potentially, arguably, the best team in Major League Baseball, and that's the Washington Nationals. Going to dive into that conversation because they've been impressive. They have a lot of good hitters in that lineup. Ryan Zimmerman right now looks to be a potential MVP candidate, but they got some problems in their bullpen, so we're going to have a conversation about the Nationals. It's going to be fun. And since, it's the middle of summer, right, football is a little bit a ways away, and I love talking my Bears on Behind the Pen, I'm going to kind of go back and look at 2016 and really look at it and say, are they really that bad, the Chicago Bears? Are they really 3-13 bad? Spoiler alert, yeah, kind of. But they're not as bad as they may seem on paper. I'm going to dive into all of this. I'm going to talk about all of this. Hopefully you can stay tuned for the entirety of this podcast on blogtalkradio.com/Behind the Pen. Lots of stuff coming at your way. If you'd like to listen to these segments in increments, check out our YouTube channel on Most Valuable Podcast. Subscribe. If you're checking in, because this first segment will be the Chicago Cubs segment, drop a like and a comment down below, and then check out the rest of the segments if you could, or if you have not already. That'd be fantastic. We appreciate the support. If you want to become a Patreon, support me, support Most Valuable Podcast. We will continue to try and entertain you more so than we already do. Now that the necessities are out of the way, necessities, we're talking Chicago Cubs. And I hate it because I'm a Cubs fan. Coming off a World Series win, I expected them to kind of run the National League, not really like they did last year, but I felt like this roster, not a lot of changes to it. They're still going to be the team to beat in the National League. That's not the case this year, and that's far from it. I'll be the first to tell you the Cubs have been underwhelming, and it's not been fun to watch this team up 2.5 months into the season now. Everybody's saying, they're fine. Things will be fine. It's still early. April, whatever. It's fine. May comes along. They're still getting into the groove of things. They'll get better. The pitching will come around. Well, it's June 9th, and things are not really, I don't even know how to describe it because they're hovering around 500 right now. They're getting a little better. There's something to be a little more enthusiastic, a little more optimistic about as opposed to the beginning of this season. But right now they're just in a rut, and this news surrounding Addison Russell doesn't help in the slightest. So I want to talk about that, and then I'm also going to talk about the Cubs season to this point as a whole. Realistically, when we look at this conversation, it's not going to be a good one. Anybody who wants to defend Addison Russell, that's fine, but because right now it's just an allegation, and I'm gonna talk about really how all of this started and how it occurred, because it's odd. Social media, the age of social media has taken over, and players are under a microscope, and it's very, very damaging to really their persona, right? Their personal lives are put on blast a lot of the time via social media, because you have to be careful. One wrong move, these guys are all up in it, the media. When I say these guys, they're all up in it when something controversial or what have you comes up. They're gonna write about it. But this is absolutely serious, and this is actually kind of concerning when you look into it. First of all, Addison Russell hasn't really had a very good season to this point. Addison Russell has been struggling at the plate. He's batting .209 with a .626 OPS. He's striking out a ton. He's got 3 home runs. He's not swinging at his pitches. He's not making consistent contact that we're used to seeing. And maybe this had something to do with it, because this didn't just occur out of nowhere, this kind of domestic violence accusation. This must have been played out for a while now, so maybe that has something to do with his struggles, but let's kind of bring up where we're at right now. So first of all, the other day, this is June 7th, this was posted, and today, or a couple days later, all of this started yesterday, the 8th. So a lot of the dicking started yesterday. So as I record this, none of this right now for Addison Russell has been determined. But where we're at right now, I have to talk about it. So apparently, Addison Russell's wife posted, not apparently, she did. Addison Russell's wife posted a photo on Instagram saying, with a caption, "Being free to be able to make your own choices for your own happiness beats being cheated on, lied to, and disrespected any day. Hashtag here's to new beginnings. Hashtag only gets better from here." Which kind of is super personal, right? I mean, putting Addison Russell on blast, we really have no backstory. We could just assume that it's not good, that Addison Russell, or I don't know, I'm not diving, I don't want to make assumptions, but from this, it seems like Addison Russell did a no-no. It gets worse because it had to, now this was blown into the proportion that it is now because the comment that was left was by a close family friend or somebody that was very highly associated with the Russell family, with Addison Russell's wife. This was the comment by Carly Reed. Carly R. Reed is the username. "Hateful is cheating on your wife, mentally and physically abusing her. Melissa didn't want that." Melissa being Russell's wife. "Melissa didn't want that out, but I'll say it. He hit her in front of Aiden and Mila. But let's worry about Melissa being hateful. She was loyal, forgiving, and kind. Still is. She found condoms in his apartment yesterday. Should I keep the list going?" That was a comment on Melissa Russell's Instagram post. This is bad because this, like I said, a close family friend literally coming out and writing it all out for the world to see. And of course, the media is going to eat it up. And now Major League Baseball is going to get into their investigation of the allegation. Now, what is interesting, well, of course, they deleted the post, and from here, now they're in their investigation states. Now, oh man, which means Cubs have to issue a statement, and Addison Russell has to issue a statement. Addison Russell is not suspended yet. Theo Epstein, interestingly enough, said that, well, yesterday he didn't participate, Addison Russell, he didn't come to the field, but Epstein said, he's not suspended yet, right? That's interesting that he said yet. So we're looking at it. Here's the statement Addison Russell said. "Any allegation I have abused my wife is false and hurtful," Russell said in a statement issued Thursday afternoon, which was yesterday. "For the well-being of my family, I'll have no further comment. Last night, we were made aware of a serious claim posted on social media about Addison Russell," the Cubs said in a statement on Thursday. "We reached out to Major League Baseball, and following the protocol established by Major League Baseball, we will fully cooperate with the commissioner's office as it gathers pertinent facts. Addison will not be in uniform tonight. We'll allow him to work through this matter." So that's the statement from the Cubs. And then also Addison Russell issued a statement. Guys on the team were talking about it. They didn't want to get into it because they're not going to incriminate themselves. They said it's unfortunate. It's a terrible situation. Now, we can look back, and it's very easy to look back at when Theo Epstein acquired Aroldis Chapman, and a lot of people, including myself, were against the move. I understand what the value was in bringing in Chapman. Hell, he carried them in the back end of the bullpen late in the game, pretty much throughout the entire postseason, and we all know that. However, that had to damage the PR aspect of the Chicago Cubs. They're not as likable when you're bringing on a guy when you know Aroldis Chapman shot warning gunshots 7 times at his fiance or girlfriend or wife or whatever that was. You remember that story. Now, Addison Russell is being put on blast on this. Now, nothing, of course, is set in stone. None of this has been confirmed to be true. However, when you're dealing with domestic violence, especially what had the epidemic that it's been throughout Major League Baseball and all of sports, the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, all of this, it's relevant. And it's a credit to Major League Baseball, first of all, in taking care of this business straight up and doing what has to be done. And I don't care if you're a biased fan. I don't care if you want to defend Addison Russell as, what he means to the team, what his personality, this isn't his character. You don't know that. You don't know his personal life. You don't know what he's going through. You don't know how he is off the field. These guys, sometimes as a fan, we forget that these athletes live a personal life outside of the field. They're like robots for our entertainment, right? We see them in uniform and there's these larger than life characters who just entertain us and we have something to cheer about. But then off the field, they're regular people like us. Of course, really talented and rich and famous and all of that, but they're people. And this is a problem. Addison Russell is dealing with something that could have a lasting effect on his career, and it could have a lasting effect on the image of the Chicago Cubs. And it's unfortunate because we already seen guys like Yuri's Familia, Hector Oliveira, Jose Reyes. Those guys have already been accused and suspended for domestic violence. This is terrible. This is terrible stuff. And just simplest terms, it's awful because it's a nightmare for the Cubs to have to deal with. It's an awful perception given by the fans now towards the Chicago Cubs as an organization, because now you have not only Aroldis Chapman being brought in, the idea that Chapman was brought in for the good of the team in terms of a baseball sense to win the ultimate goal. Can you come to terms with that? Yes, you have a ring. Can you come to terms with that knowing that, he's abusive to his partner? And that's the same thing that goes now for Addison Russell. Now, nothing, like I said, has been completely confirmed, but we got to keep an eye on the story, and I just wanted to bring light on the subject. And I want to move on, though, into the Chicago Cubs season right now as a whole, because it hasn't been very good. And you add on top of the struggles within Addison Russell's personal life, overall, the Chicago Cubs team has not been productive. Offensively, they're being carried pretty much by Chris Bryant. He's doing almost everything statistically offensively for this club, and their starting rotation has been rocky, to say the least. Now, guys have been starting to make better starts as of late. John Lackey, for example, has been pitching well. However, he's had a pretty terrible first couple months of the season, but his last few starts have been looking more like the John Lackey we're used to. When we talk about a guy like Jake Arrieta, too, he threw a ton of innings over the last couple seasons, an absolute buttload, especially in 2015, coming off, almost 240 innings pitched, including the postseason. Then you added on to last year's performance, in which Arrieta didn't really miss a start, pitched in the postseason as well. So it's a lot of tax on this guy's arm, and his velocity hasn't been there. It hasn't been there since the start of the season. So that forces him to start throwing more breaking pitches. He's been giving up a lot of hard contact to that. And when you can't overpower guys, because remember, he wasn't really a guy who could manipulate the corners with his fastball because of his mechanics. Sometimes the location of his pitches were, sometimes really good, and then other times you didn't know what was going to happen. So you kind of had a change of philosophy in the way Jake Arrieta approaches, the way he attacks hitters, and that's resulted in kind of a struggle this season as well. Overall, it hasn't been terrible. Of course, I'm not going to say he's been awful, but at the same time, he's starting to regress. And remember, the Cubs were kind of in contract talks with him after that Cy Young season, but now, in his last year of his contract, he has a 4.46 ERA with a 1.30 whip. I mean, it's nothing special. It's really nothing special. Kyle Hendricks is hurt currently, but he's been knocked around a little bit. He's been missing a lot because, of course, he's the manipulator of his pitches, the off-speed pitches, works the corners and this and that. He's been hit hard pretty much all season long. John Lester, he's the stable guy. I really can't say anything really bad about John Lester, despite a couple terrible starts. But John Lester will carry you. John Lester's a guy who is a legitimate ace of your rotation. But overall, pitching staff has been inconsistent, and the defense has been inconsistent. And that's been a problem. Compared to last year, starting rotation absolutely carried this team, 100%. The offense scored a decent amount of runs, right? Especially during the first 2 months of the season when the Cubs had a tremendous start. But it was the pitching, and it was the bullpen, and it was the defense. Defense has been shaky, especially when you have a guy like Schwarber in left field, and you have guys kicking it around in the infield here and there, which is something that we haven't seen. We're not used to in a Joe Maddon-led club. That's been a part of the problem. Offensively, they've been struggling. Rizzo hasn't been the same. And I think it has to be said, with the amount of games that's being played, this could be, you could label this as an excuse, but I just wanted to make this known that all of the games, the Cubs start the last game of the season, they stopped on November 2nd, they won the World Series. And then, of course, you had the short off season. You get into spring training. That's a lot of games. You have to play 35 to 40 games of spring training ball, in which, first of all, in my opinion, that's ridiculously too long. But you have that, and then you add on the amount of games, 100 games before the All-Star break? So that's almost an entire season. Plus, you combine that with last year and the length that they played in the playoffs. These guys are going to be exhausted, especially the arms. And we're seeing it specifically with Jake Arrieta and guys like John Lackey, and who is getting older. John Lackey, last year of his contract, right? Who knows what's going to happen with him moving forward. And that's another concern for the Cubs. Last year looked great. Last year we were like, yeah, this team's going to be in the World Series every single year for the next 20 years. Of course, that's a hyperbole, but you know what I'm saying. That's the confidence level we had. Not so much this year. What are the Cubs going to do about their pitching rotation moving forward? Arrieta's most likely going to walk, in my opinion. I think he's going to be gone after this season. John Lackey needs to be replaced. He's going to be gone after this season. They don't have a fifth starter this season. They're throwing out Brett Anderson, who is garbage, Eddie Butler, and Mike Montgomery now has to fill spot starts because, guys are hurt. Kyle Hendricks is hurt. They don't have a back end of the rotation, and their middle of the rotation is iffy at best. So this is cause for concern. And the thing is, too, they don't have guys in the minor leagues to fill those roles. They don't have pitchers in the minor leagues. Theo Epstein stockpiled positional depth, right? And that allowed him to get guys like Montgomery. He traded Vogelbach for Montgomery, which ultimately led to a World Series ring. He traded, Gleyber Torres, right? And Billy McKinney, a guy who was acquired in that Addison Russell deal when they traded Samardzija and Hamill. He was a part of that Aroldis Chapman deal, which ultimately led to a World Series. But that's Theo Epstein's mantra. You had stockpile positional depth, top prospects to deal and acquire arms or invest in arms in the offseason. Now the Cubs are going to have to make a move. The back end of the bullpen, this is what I will say. The bullpen looks shaky to start the season, but I'm really excited to see guys like Grimm, C.J. Edwards, Wade Davis has been outstanding. Koji O'Hara has been a solid pickup. The back end of the bullpen's starting to take shape, and I'm fine with it. Pedro Strope's been outstanding as of late, so that's fine. They don't really have to go out and get a bullpen arm, maybe a middle relief guy, but the focus has to be on the starting pitching, right? They're going to have to go get a guy maybe like Chris Archer. That might cost you a Baez. Well, I don't even know who is worth trading at this point because you don't want to get rid of Eloy Jimenez, in my opinion. You have to keep Ian Happ, in my opinion. Baez looks to be a guy that could be moved. Schwarber can't be moved. I don't care what anybody says. This is a struggle year for him at the plate, but he's too valuable of a hitter. And I know the defensive flaws he has in left field, but he's just too valuable of a player right now to give up on him after one season. So the Cubs have some work to do. That's exactly it. And especially with this Addison Russell case, this has to be taken care of. And, it's really unfortunate the way it played out because it was pretty much out of nowhere. It was put on blast. Russell's wife posts that Instagram post, and then eventually a close family friend comes in and makes it 10 times worse and brings light to the situation. So the Cubs have to figure that out, and then they also have to figure it out on the field. And what are they going to do? Are they going to acquire a starter? Jason Vargas, a lefty who's been solid for the Royals? Who knows? So that's where the Cubs are at. They are looking up at the Brewers right now. Really, the thing is that's been good for them is that they're playing in a terrible division, a very mediocre division. So the Cubs can hover around 500 for as long as they want, get hot, and then suddenly take, a 5-6 game lead potentially in the NL Central. However, they got to play well enough to do that firsthand. So right there, I'm going to end it because the Cubs kind of stress me out, and I don't like it when they stress me out. But that's where they are right now. We'll keep you updated right here on Behind the Pen on the Addison Russell news as it continues to play out. Thank you guys for sticking around for this segment of Behind the Pen. If you want more Most Valuable Podcast content, click on the video up above because I don't know why you wouldn't want to keep listening to our voices every day. But again, guys, thank you all for listening. We really do appreciate you.